Welcome to Ask a Property Manager, episode 106. Today we're going to be taking a look at a property, doing a little bit of a deep dive analysis to see if it would make for a good investment. Stick around to the end of this video and we'll show you how to get a copy of our deal analyzing tool absolutely free. Stay tuned. So today we're going to be taking a look at a duplex property in West Seneca, New York. This is actually not too far from our office. It's not one of our listings, however, it is an actively listed property in the MLS as of the recording of this video. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to desktop mode here so that we can show you the MLS window that I'm working from. And this is our subject property, 2830 Seneca Street in West Seneca. It's listed for $159,900. It is just shy of 2,000 square foot. This is a duplex property. They're both 2-bedroom apartments, and you can see that they have some rent amounts listed in here. 2-bed, 1-bath apartments, 2 electric units, 2 gas meters, 2 heat units. That's important to me. I like to see the utilities separated out because that's one of those things that you don't necessarily want to include in the rent. So it's good to see that stuff split out. And then I also like to look to see if there's any sort of a garage, which we do have a garage here, 2.5 spaces. Let's go ahead and flip through these photos real quick just so you can get a feel for what this property looks like. And again, this is a duplex property in West Seneca, which is going to be one of the first ring suburbs from Buffalo, city of Buffalo. Kind of runs along the South Buffalo, Kaisertown area. And you can see that this subject property is overall not in too bad a shape. Could certainly use some updates here in the kitchen, especially with the flooring, things of that nature. But overall, this property is not in too bad a shape. It looks to be in pretty good repair. Bathroom floor could probably use some work. And then this is the upper apartment. These are obviously older photos of the upper apartment. You can see that there's some older flooring up here as well, but it looks to be in good shape. The kitchen's pretty dated. I shouldn't even say the kitchen's dated because now the farmhouse style sinks are back in style and there are newer cabinets up there. So it looks like there has been some work done in that upstairs kitchen. Reverse shot of the kitchen. So you can see that this property has had some work done on it. It's been maintained over the years, etc., etc. There's one of the bathrooms. That looks to be in good shape. Photo of your garage. Another photo of your garage. Looks like you have a decent little parking area back here. And then that is a photo of the front of the house looking towards the back of the property. So to give you an idea of what our subject property looks like, basically what I'm going to be doing is trying to determine, number one, what would be an appropriate purchase price for this property, i.e. is the list price appropriate for an offer? And then I'm also going to be looking to see, does the property make sense as an investment property? Do the financials work? So the first thing I'm going to do is, I've already done a lot of the research on this prior to filming, so I can kind of jump around a little bit easier. But I'm going to jump over to a map, and I'm in the MLS right now. Obviously, I have access to this as an agent, but you could do some of this research yourself using other tools such as tax records. As much as I hate to say it, you could probably get some sold data off of Zillow as well, but don't just trust the Zestimate data that they're giving you, and I'll explain why as we kind of get into the video here a little bit. So this is our subject property, 2830 Seneca Street in West Seneca. What I did was I dropped a half-mile radius around this property to look for other sold properties. I want these properties to be within the last 6 months because that tells me that the sales data is current. And then again, I would also be looking for properties within 25% of the square footage, plus or minus. I don't want something that's super, super large. I don't want something that's super, super small to compare to. I want something that's going to be relatively within the same range. I am also looking for properties whenever possible that have 2 units. I don't want to have to comp down from a 3 or a 4 unit to a duplex if I can avoid that. In this area, that's not a problem. There's a lot of duplexes to be able to comp to. I'm also checking those things that I'd mentioned earlier, the gas meters, electric meters, the electric meters, the number of heat units, and the number of garage spaces. Those are things that are easy to comp on or important to comp on when you're talking about looking at other projects or other properties that are in a similar radius to your property. Basically, you're trying to get as close to an apples comparison as possible so that you can make a determination as to whether the property you're looking at is worth what they're asking. We're not going to sit and jump into all of the ins and outs on how to determine values for adjustments and things like that. We could probably have a several hours long class on that, and then talking about appraisals beyond that and things of that nature. But for this purpose, we're just trying to get a good general idea so that we know whether or not we're on target or not. So we're going to start with this property on Floor Avenue. And again, this is within a half mile of our subject property. This property sold for $150,000. It was listed for $120,000. So this went significantly over asking price, a little bit smaller than our subject property, but it does have 2 apartments, 2 bedrooms each. You can see here one of those is vacant. The other one has a very, very low rent. 2 electric, 2 gas, 2 heat units, and 2 garage spaces. So we're pretty close on our comparables there. We'll flip through the photos here real quick just so you can get a feel for what this property looks like. And it's pretty clear just as we're flipping through the photos here that this property is in a much nicer state than the subject property that we are comping against. You can see that this has been well updated. There's been a lot of work done in this property. We're still in the lower unit here. Updated bathrooms, the washer dryer setup there. And now we're in the upper apartment. The one thing that holds me back on the upper apartment is I'm not a huge fan of the slanted ceilings. Like as a renter, it would bother me. So as a property investor, I would look at that and think, okay, is this going to cause a lower rent? Which, pro tip, it will. You know, if there's something about the property that makes it odd in a negative way, it will definitely impact your rent. Having to crouch every time you walk through a doorway, I'm 6 foot. Every time I walk through that doorway, I would have to crouch. That would be a deterrent for me. Same thing here. It limits the usable space in your living room and things of that nature. The bedrooms, again. So there are pros and there are cons. The unit has, the downstairs unit's updated. The upstairs unit may be a little bit less so. The upstairs unit, though, you do have the slanted ceiling, which does make it a little bit more difficult for some renters to use that space. With it being more updated, it does make sense that this property would go in that 150 range. In terms of the number of bedrooms and bathrooms, you do have 2 beds, 2 beds, 1 bath in each apartment. This property makes a very, very good comp to our subject property based off of everything that we've talked about. All the square footage, the features, this, that, and the other thing. Jumping back to our, we're gonna go ahead and click that. Jumping back to our map here, 55 Dirksen. This one was sold for $40,000. And this sold at the end of 2021. This was in November 2021. And we're going to jump to our client full. There we go. So this sold for $40,000, and you can see why. This property actually needed a full rehab, a full interior rehab. So to use this as a comp at the list price that it was listed at, given the amount of work that the property needed, obviously you can see that wouldn't make sense. So this is not a good comp for our subject property. Pretty easy to eliminate that one. This one on Klaus is a nice listing. This one is 1,700, almost 1,800 square foot. Our property's just shy of 2,000 square foot. So there would be a little bit of an adjustment that you might want to consider for the square footage. Taking a look at the subject, or I'm sorry, at the comparable property here, you can see that it is in good repair. And all of the properties that we picked are in West Seneca, which is also important to note. We're very close to South Buffalo, where this property is located. And when you're choosing properties, when you're choosing comps, try to stay in the same town whenever possible. And especially when you're talking about jumping from City of Buffalo to West Seneca, for instance, there's a significant tax difference between those 2 areas, which will definitely have an impact on your property values. So now we're actually inside the lower unit here. You can see that this unit is pretty well updated. I would say this is probably more updated than our subject property. Scrolling through here, you can see there's some more photos. This property's been pretty well taken care of. It does have drop ceilings in several rooms, which I'm not a huge fan of. That is something that could be replaced. I also see that there's some possible water damage or something up there. So it's not without flaws, obviously. But no property is. You're never going to buy a property that was built in this time frame, and I'm assuming that most of these properties are built in the mid-1900s. I didn't actually check the year built on these, but we can in a second. But you can see this property's had quite a bit of work as well. This property sold for $138,000 at the end of last year, at the end of 2021. It is a little bit smaller than our subject property. It's in good repair, though. I would say it's maybe a touch nicer, but definitely comparable to our subject property. These are both 3-bedroom apartments, and the rents are a little bit higher. Obviously, you would make an adjustment because these 2 bedrooms because there's an extra bedroom in each unit, you would adjust down a little bit on the sale price for those bedrooms, and then you're going to wind up adjusting up because of the square footages. So when you're comparing square footages, obviously this sale price would see a little bit of a bump up due to the extra square footage from one property to another. In terms of the beds, baths, the electrics, the gas, the heat units, the garage spaces, we are shy 1.5 garage spaces here, but everything else matches up. So really your adjustments on this are going to be your square footage, your number of bedrooms, and the garage spaces. That's what you would be adjusting on this. I do like this as a comp. We're going to go ahead and select that one, jump back to our map, and we'll take a look at Kirkwood. I believe that was the final comp that I'd picked out. There we go. Change our view back to client. There we go. Kirkwood, this one sold for $135,000. This sold at the end of 2021 as well, in October of 2021. Sold for $135,000. This is a 1,725 square foot home built in 1932. Scrolling down here, you can see we do have our 2 electric, 2 gas, 2 heat units. We do have 1 garage space, 3 bed, 1 bath in these units, and you can see that the rents are incredibly, incredibly low here. You have $550 in the lower 3 bedroom, and you have a $290 in the upper 1 bedroom. Those are super, super low. Honestly, all of the rents that I've seen on the properties could stand to be jumped up a little bit, but we'll get into that here in a second when we start talking about the actual numbers on our property. Scrolling through here so that you could take a look at some of these photos. This property is obviously in need of some updates. This is not as updated as what our subject property is. You can see that there's a lot of flooring, some paint work that needs to be done, just general updates throughout this property. Kitchens could probably stand to have a little bit of work done. A little bit of a basement photo here. Not a lot of photos of the actual units, but you at least get the idea. On this one at $135,000, you're probably going to be putting some money into this one to bring it up to spec, especially if you want to jump these rents up. If you want to jump these rents up, you're going to have to put some cash back into that property. So for that reason, at $135,000, I think $135,000 is probably fair for that property, knowing that they're going to probably have to dump 10, 15 into it to bring the rents up to where they would want to. So we've kind of looked at our comp properties here, and when I'm looking for comps, I'm trying to find at least 3 comps within, in this instance, a half-mile radius. We were able to keep them all in the same township, which was awesome. That keeps our tax base roughly the same, things of that nature. But based on our information here, you can see our subject properties listed $160 for a 2,000 square foot. We have a $135 for a 1,700 square foot, a $138 for a almost 1,800 square foot, and a $150 for a 1,650 square foot. So all of the properties that we have picked out as comparable properties are sold for a lesser price than what the subject property is currently listed at. Granted, the subject property is a little bit larger, but the subject property does need some work as well. And again, we'll see, the kitchens could use some work. It's not too bad. It's not nearly as bad as the property on Kirkwood, I think was the last one we looked at, but it does need some work. That said, I think that $159,900 is probably a touch high for this property. I would probably be talking somewhere in the $145 to $150 range. That gives you some room to go in and actually do work on the property that you're going to want to do in order to raise those rents. So what do the numbers on this property look like? Is this property financeable? Is this something that the bank would even talk to you about? This is our investment property deal analysis sheet. You can get this sheet absolutely free over at whatsdrewupto.com. Let me pull up a browser window here. Hang on one second. All right, brief pause there, and you can go right to What's Drew Up To, grab my free real estate deal analysis spreadsheet. It's a very simple form. First, last name, email address. I'm not going to send you emails unless you want me to send you emails, but you are going to get a copy of that spreadsheet absolutely free. You are going to get a companion video just like this one showing you how I actually go in and do the deal analysis. On this one, I've already filled in the form with the purchase price of the property at $159,900. I'm assuming we're going to pay full price for this property. I'm also assuming we're putting no money into it for repairs, which obviously we think we're going to have to put a little bit into it for repairs. As far as our total investment cost, we're at that $159,000 for a per unit of $79,950. Our actual cash down, that is a 20% down payment at $159,900. 20% is $31,980. So that's where our actual cash invested comes from. We do have 2 beds, 1 bath. We already went ahead and put our current rents in here, which automatically calculated our per month and our per year rents. The property taxes I actually pulled directly from the MLS here, just down at the bottom of the MLS. So sometimes that information is accurate and sometimes it's not. It really depends on the agent that has the listing and how much dedication and time they put into doing that research. I just copied it for our purposes today, but if you are going to do a deal analysis, you should definitely go and get the true tax numbers directly from the source. As far as electric and gas go, I put 0 in there for those because the tenants are paying for the gas and electric services. You should keep in mind that you may have electric and gas bills during turnover periods when that unit is vacant. As far as the water and sewer number goes, that actually came to me from the MLS itself. It was in the private remarks, the agent-only remarks, which you guys were unable to see, but they did give us a number for that water sewer bill, so that's why I threw that in there. Vacancy, maintenance, and management, I threw in a 10% placeholder on each of these. Even if you're planning on self-managing, even if you're planning on doing your own maintenance, you have to factor in for maintenance, management, and vacancy, because all three of those things do happen. Your time has value even if you're self-managing the property, and you should be factoring for that. Your time has value even if you're doing your own maintenance, and you need to factor for that. And you should definitely factor for having some level of vacancy, because tenants don't stay forever, and there's always going to be a gap between the time that the old tenant leaves and the time that the new tenant moves in. And that may vary widely depending on how much work you need to do in the apartment. So always factor that in when you're talking about doing a deal analysis. Landscaping and snow removal, I put 500 in here. That's because we have our lawns cut. We don't handle that in-house. We have our lawns cut by an outside service. And then generally on duplexes, tenants are responsible for their own snow removal. So we take care of the lawn, but tenants would be responsible for their own snow. If you have any other charges that you wanted to throw in here, other expenses, you could do that there. Then your mortgage payment, which is the principal and interest only, because we already have our taxes factored in here. We already have our insurance factored in here. If you need a mortgage calculator, we already have it built into the form here. You just drop your information in, your interest rate, your loan amount. For the monthly property tax amount, I just put 0 in here because, again, we'd already factored it on the other side. I just needed a principal and interest payment, and that's where we got our $64.72, which is what we dropped into our mortgage payment field down here. So, will the bank finance this property, and is it a good investment? As I see it, the answer to both of those questions is no. The reason I say that is because banks like to see a debt service coverage ratio of at least 1.2. And there's actually some information over here about debt service coverage, cash on cash return, cap rate, etc., that you can come down and kind of get a little bit more knowledge if you're looking for that right here on the spreadsheet. Banks want to see this debt service coverage ratio of at least 1.2, which essentially means that they want to know how many multiples of revenue do you have to cover debt. They want to see at least a 1.2 multiple of revenue to debt obligations, which is where that 1.2 comes in. This property, as it sits right now, is only sitting at a 0.95, which means most banks probably are not going to have a lot of interest in financing this property. You also have a negative cash on cash return, which I never love to see, and a very, very low cap rate. Everybody has different values for what they feel cap rate and cash on cash return should be, and it is market specific, so I'm not going to jump into where you should be in your market, but it should certainly never be a negative cash on cash return. That much I can tell you for certain. So what can you do to make this property a little bit more appealing? Well, I think the most obvious thing that you can do here is bump these rents up to appropriate levels of $850 and $850 for those 2-bedroom apartments. When you bump those rents up, you are going to see that you have a higher gross income of $20,400, but that also means that we need to come down here and update our vacancy, management, and maintenance and CapEx. Maintenance and CapEx is actually broken into one category there. So those are going to increase because obviously the nicer the apartment, the more expensive the maintenance becomes. The larger the rent, the more expensive the vacancy becomes, et cetera, et cetera. So you're not going to get to that $850 without putting some cash back into this property, though. So right now you can see you're barely going to get it done on that debt service coverage ratio of 1.3. So if you need to sit and put, let's say you put $15,000 into this property, and where are we at? The 31,980 plus 15, 46,980 is now your actual cash invested. Making some adjustments here. I'm going to assume that we're taking that 15 out of cash, so I'm not going to adjust the mortgage numbers. But if you were taking that on as a mortgage, you would just adjust your mortgage numbers in the calculator and then bring that back into the spreadsheet here. So if you're going to take that 15 in cash and as well as the $159,900 purchase price, Okay, now we're talking. We have at least a positive cash on cash and a positive cap rate. We do have a positive debt service coverage ratio. I don't love the cash on cash or the cap rate. I would like to see those higher, but at least at this point, the bank would finance this as a deal. So that's good information to have. The other thing you can do is sit and work on your purchase price. So for instance, if we can bring our purchase price down, let's take our cash invested back down, take our repairs down, and let's say we can get this property for $150,000 rather than the original $159,900. At $150,000, our 20% down payment is going to be $30,000. We're going to go ahead and throw that in there, and then we need to come back into our mortgage calculator. Purchase price $150,000, and we are putting in $120,000 as our loan amount. That gives us our yearly loan of $6,071. $6,071. And then we'll come back up here and take a look at our numbers. Now we're starting to look a little bit better. You know, getting the property for a little bit better price. Obviously, we took our repair total back out, but you get the idea. The spreadsheet allows you to really go ahead and play with this deal in a fashion that allows you to tinker and see what makes sense. Can I make this deal work? Does the deal make sense if I put 15 into it? What if I don't have to take to put money into it? What if I can bump the rents up by X? What if I can't get them that high? This spreadsheet gives you a very, very easy way to do a quick deal analysis, get a very good feel for whether or not a property is going to be a winner or a loser for you right off the bat before you have to sit and jump into making an offer and going through your inspection and that entire process. Don't forget, you can grab a copy of this spreadsheet absolutely free over at whatsdrewupto.com. Click on the button to grab the free deal analysis spreadsheet. No obligation, absolutely free. You will get access to another companion video showing you how I actually analyze deals, just like this one. So you'll have a couple of these videos to look at and really see how I go in and look at things. I appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have a friend or someone that you know that would benefit from this, please do us a favor and share it with them. It really helps us to grow, and that's awesome. Otherwise, we'll be back next week with another show you won't want to miss. Questions or comments, drop them below. We'll talk to you soon.